All right. Well, good morning. I don't know what to do about that. Usually it's the other way around, sir. Usually I'm introducing you and not you introducing me. But as the AUSA headquarters resident logistician, I do get the honor and privilege of providing some brief introductory remarks to what I'm sure will be a fascinating day in our hot topic series. Today's topic, contested logistics and large-scale combat operations. If you did not know, the Vice President for Membership and Meetings here at the Association of the United States Army has been held by a long line of distinguished Army logisticians, to include Lieutenant General retired Pat McQuistion, now an AUSA Senior Fellow and one of today's moderators. Great to see you, Pat. And prior to Pat, Lieutenant General retired Roger Thompson, who held the position for a number of years. So I'm very excited to have you all here and be able to interact with some of the Army's most esteemed sustainment professionals about contested logistics. Certainly a hot topic in the Army Futures Command's newest cross-functional team. Although I'm not quite sure about the title of the CFT. Even as a 30-year plus logistician, I've always considered logistics contested, albeit contested amongst ourselves, not necessarily from the enemy. But even in peacetime, logistics is hard government business. As the boss said, if it were easy, we'd let infantrymen do it. So why now? Why stand up an organization like the Contested Logistics CFT when the other CFTs basically mirror the Army's modernization priorities? So I posed that question back in August 2018 when Army Futures Command was stood up. And the answer was that logisticians will have a seat on every CFT, and they'll have a seat at the table. Well, I mean, that may address sustainment concerns for a particular weapon system, but it does not address the concept and design of our logistics tail, particularly in a contested environment. So the Army, as a learning organization, finally got it right with the addition of the Contested Logistics CFT. So I thought I'd spend a little time about some experiences that I've had and observed bits and pieces of sustainment across the spectrum of conflict that has been contested, whether it's been in a major exercise or a conflict. So as a lieutenant in Germany in the late 80s, Reforger, return of forces to Germany. I mean, many of you remember those days, that annual exercise conducted by NATO during the Cold War, intended to ensure that we had the ability to quickly deploy forces to Germany in the event of a conflict with the Warsaw Pact. So, you remember the mantra, 10 divisions in 10 days. We were lucky to get one division, and the exercise really didn't contest our movement from fort to port and port to port. It did test our ability for RSOI, reception, staging, onward movement, and integration. And it did exercise at the time, our extensive Army pre-position stocks. But even in the multitude of Army command post exercises, division and corps warfighters, and others, the sustainment portion has typically been highly artificial. I mean, how many times have you seen the CSR equal the RSR, or combat units being magically resupplied in order to meet exercise objectives? And then there was Desert Shield and Desert Storm, a resounding operational and tactical success, but contested logistics, I think even Lieutenant General Pagonis would acknowledge that the contest was in moving those mountains, but in an uncontested and lengthy buildup. In 1993, we had the peace dividend and a procurement holiday that resulted in the consolidation of the defense industrial base in the wake of the SecDef meeting with major prime contractors and their suppliers, which became famously known as the Last Supper. We're now seeing the impact of this consolidation in our efforts to mobilize industry to meet the ammunition requirement to support Ukraine in their fight. As the 3rd Infantry Division G4 and then the 703rd Main Support Battalion Commander in Operation Iraqi Freedom, my combat logistics patrols resupplying the division were asymmetrically contested predominantly through IEDs, EFPs, RPG attacks, snipers, and along the spokes of our hub and spoke distribution system. It was there and then we realized that our Army's combat service support formations were not equipped to protect ourselves, and hence the rush to fill the mine-resistant ambush protected vehicle, the MRAP. And in that rush to field the MRAP, we sacrificed the sustainability of that system. And I'll complete this reminiscing with the current conflict in Ukraine and the now infamous example of the Russians ignoring contested logistics in their failed attempt to take Kyiv. These examples indicate, while some portion of logistics along the spectrum of conflict has been contested, We have not experienced an adversary holistically contesting our operations from the strategic support area to the tactical point of need. With our national security strategy objectives to outcompete China and constrain Russia, we now see that Army forces cannot expect to deploy without being challenged. As I've outlined for decades, U.S. military forces conducted uncontested and generally predictable deployments from home stations to operational theaters because threat actors lacked the capability to significantly affect deploying units at home station or while in transit to a theater of operation. As the Army's newest operations manual describes, this is no longer the case. We can expect some level of opposition, either kinetic or not, from port to port to port, and during our SOI. And sustainment considerations for homeland defense and defense support to civil authorities is not something we have spent a lot of time considering in the past. Fortunately, that is all changing. From the Army announcement at our annual meeting in 2022 of the release of FM 3-0, which includes an appendix on contested deployments, to the creation of the Contested Logistics CFT within Army Futures Command and co-located with Army Materiel Command in Huntsville, to the recent and first time ever National Defense Industrial Strategy, the NDIS, published in November of 23. We are now considering contested logistics from the factory to the foxhole, or as General Hamilton, the AMC commanding general, says, from the foxhole to the factory. The comprehensive NDIS aims to answer the question, how do we prioritize and optimize defense needs in a competitive landscape undergirded by geopolitical, economic, and technological tensions? The lessons we have learned since the Last Supper and highlighted by current acute threats illustrate that the DoD needs to move aggressively towards innovative, next-generation capabilities while continuing to upgrade and produce in significant volumes conventional weapon systems that are already in the force. So DoD is moving that way and wants to enable industry. The Army is moving that way, and here at AUSA, we stand ready and able to assist. How might you ask? And now our shameless plug for AUSA. As the Army's professional association, AUSA provides one voice for the total Army, an invaluable connection between the Army, Congress, industry, local communities, and the American people. As Alex mentioned, we now have over 1.5 million members, and through 9 regions and 122 chapters, all incredible volunteers demonstrating an amazing example of selfless service. Our mission, educate, inform, and connect. We educate soldiers and their families, Army civilians, veterans, and industry that support the Army with programs, products, resources, and events. We inform AUSA members, Congress, and the public about issues affecting the total Army with papers on key defense topics, events that allow Army leaders to address key issues of concern, communicate the Army's vision, and bring together experts on critical Army issues. This hot topic is a perfect example of that. And as Alex pointed out, our recently published AUSA Land Power essay titled Contested Logistics, a Primer. Hot off the press, great timing, available to you absolutely free. This paper does not seek to provide answers to contested logistics, but rather provides information that spurs like-minded individuals to think about the problem holistically. And I think it's important, as a contested logistics CFT cranks up its operation, that it not just focus on the M, the materiel solution, but considers the problem across the .mil PFP. At AUSA, we also inform key stakeholders where the Army needs assistance and support, and we join forces with other like-minded organizations to support the Army. So we educate, we inform, and we connect. Connect America's total Army, industry partners, and others at the national, regional, and chapter levels. And along this topic of contested logistics, we have several upcoming events designed to support the Army's efforts. On 13 March, we are hosting General Hamilton for our AUSA Coffee Series. 26 to 28 March, we're holding our sustainment-focused Global Force Symposium and Exposition with our partners from AMC, AFC, and TRADOC in Huntsville. And in May, we are planning another hot topic here, like today, focused on the defense industrial base. We'll follow that up with LAMPAC, 14 to 16 May in Honolulu, that will highlight the significant sustainment challenges in the Indo-Pacific. And to our Army sustainment community and the industry partners that support them, we are here for you, and we want to promote your valiant efforts. So today we have a tremendous day lined up with panels of experts to discuss the Army in transition, sustaining Army 2030 and 2040, and transforming to 2040, enhancing Army readiness to prevail in contested logistics, Army logistics and network dependency, in homeland defense and force projection. So to kick things off, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Major General James Smith, Director of Operations, G4357, Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff, G4. I've known James since he was a company commander in the late 90s in the 1st Infantry Division, absolute superstar, logistician, and a talented leader, even as a transportation officer. James' command assignments include that aforementioned, that beast, the Bravo Company in the Maine Support Battalion. Man, I miss that company, had all the hets. That was an amazing outfit. He commanded the 215th Brigade Support Battalion, the 599th Transportation Brigade, and as a general officer, he's commanded the 3rd Expeditionary Sustainment Command, served as the 31st Chief of Transportation, and most recently, the Commanding General of 21st Theater Sustainment Command in Europe. His breadth of experience at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels make him an ideal speaker for our contested logistics hot topic. Ladies and gentlemen, Major General James Smith.